Hi, my name is McKee. I prefer the pronouns he or him, and I'm currently a DevOps and SRE Advocate working for Nationwide Building Society. Before I get into the talk today in earnest, I just want to tell you a little bit about who and what Nationwide are. So Nationwide is the world's largest building society. So we're not a bank, although we're in the banking sector. The main difference is that we're owned by our members and there are no shareholders. Our members number just over 16 million in the UK at this current time, and we're really proud of our #1 for customer service and our trusted financial brand. This year, profit was down to about £500 million, and that profit from a mutual perspective is reinvested back into our business and into the member benefits. Nationwide's been around for quite a while. We were established in 1846, and we were 174 years old. During that period, we've made several acquisitions, such as Anglia, Portman, Derbyshire. That, embedded with our traditional behaviours, has led to what I like to call maybe a technological lasagna, so multiple layers or technology spaghetti. And as such, that's made us a bit more slow and clunky than we'd like to be, especially in the current market. Also, being a mutual, our values have led us to a very sort of risk-averse organisation and a risk-sharing approach where we're actually quite collegiate in our decision-making. A bit about me then, and my role. My background was I started in IT back in 2000. I joined a firm as a junior programmer, having previously had no IT experience. I worked on the IBM mainframe, KIX and PL1. I moved across to Unix, where I wrote polling and authorization software, adding C and Java to sort of my list of languages. And then, like many people, I had the opportunity to lead those technical teams that then drove and evolved into leading the application support department. And then I've gone on to lead application support departments in a few other organizations. Until eventually I joined Nationwide about 5 years ago. This continued my application support journey, but after about 12 months, I was offered the opportunity to explore this new thing called DevOps, but formerly the Nationwide. And then over the last 3 to 4 years, I've worked on an Agile at Scale initiative. I've worked in Nationwide Digital. I've worked for the Cloud Pathfinders, and then more recently into the Ways of Working program initiative. And this really has given me a chance to learn and practice both DevOps and SRE with an open mind, but probably actually quite an operational bias. So today I want to talk about the 3 ways to implement DevOps. This doesn't bear any relation to the DevOps 3 ways, but actually represents my journey and my experiences of how we've gone around implementing DevOps within Nationwide. So those ways are embedded in a development team, a special envoy from Ops, or as an enablement team. The first way, well, I said it's embedded in a development team. Actually, the probably correct term would be embedded in a product team. The team here recognised there was a need to build a cross-functional team that was both capable and empowered to achieve the goals and outcomes that we had set as a team. And I think that's where I start, the common goal. Off the bat, having that link between the goal and purpose from a business outcome member value all the way through down to the feature and Scrum teams was absolutely fantastic and really transparent. This helped us, specifically from an engineering perspective, where the team was now going to be responsible for both build and run activities, meaning quite a significant change in mindset. What also worked in that context was the focus on flow and business value. As most of you know, the concept of flow is trying to go from left to right as quickly as possible through the business, development, operations, and ultimately to the customer where the value is actually created. So knowing this vision and goal, understanding flow, and being empowered to be able to run end-to-end product teams, we set about building those capabilities. And we worked very well together to build them and naturally evolve them. There was a risk here, though. For those people that aren't familiar with the team topologies work that Matt Skelton and Emil Powers have done, I would really recommend reading that to get further understanding. For us, though, and personally, this is about a warning about recognising that we didn't want to move to this anti-type, where essentially the DevOps team becomes almost another silo, and actually it just adds another layer of confusion to how that system end-to-end works and operates. I think as long as we have an awareness that actually this is time boxed, or this could lead to organisational dev and ops teams coming together, that's okay. But we have to be specifically cognizant about that. So how would I conclude that first approach? I think for me, this absolutely was around the team itself thinking, how do I take on more responsibility? Coupled with the fact that we were really keen not to add additional walls of confusion. So rather than the old traditional dev and ops, we didn't want to have that DevOps and operations team. Then we'd built that team capability and we were working effectively and we were working at pace. We wanted that to be reflected back into the organisation itself in terms of how it worked, to make rapid decisions, to react as fast as we had been, and to be able to crash through problems. The reality was that actually this isn't what happened. It either didn't happen or couldn't happen. The organisation was wrestling with enterprise controls and risks, regulatory requirements, without a common goal to bind them together. On to the second approach, or the second way. This is around becoming a special envoy from ops. There was a real good recognition within the operations organisation, part of the organisation, that we had to think about, as things changed, how do operations be involved? We should be involved in that. However, that still for me had a bit of a resonance of us going to help them. This approach meant that it really felt like having a foot in both camps, balancing different priorities and very different views. The view from operation absolutely was about reliability and stability were number one above everything else. And culturally, failure was not an option. And I think this came from both technological and organisational debt that influenced that mindset and thinking. As for an opposing counter view, well, I think the lack of a common goal and sometimes the language stopped there even being one. So we ended up with two very different views of what the direction, what the goal was. And this lack of common goal meant the teams were inhibited in their efforts to be effective in transforming their ways of working and what they did, and often resulted in siloed operating, duplicated and redundant work. And this also then led to frustration and disengagement, if not a little naivety towards the operational elements and capabilities. And I relate this very back to another piece of work from Matt and Manuel around the anti-type C, where dev don't need ops. This topology is born from a combination of naivety and arrogance maybe, but also I guess from a frustration through the lack of engagement. And this resulted in ops capabilities not really being understood, and the importance and the relevance of those potentially being wildly underestimated. This then leads into almost a spiral of, okay, if that's outside of our control, what is in our control? So that led to more focus on pace, continuous integration and automation. And I think all this did was actually further exacerbated the view that ops weren't being considered properly. This then led to multiple splinter conversations, increased siloed operating, but at the same time, it fundamentally exposed that some of the major cultural elements still existed and definitely weren't fixed. So if I conclude that second approach, for me, this was around operations almost begrudgingly giving power to the dev team to do stuff because it didn't believe that actually they knew what they were doing. This really again emphasised the fact that without common goals, siloed working, which was set up by design, continued to be how we worked. The culture wasn't right. The balance between the teams were also off, and we definitely didn't break down any barriers. There's a quote for me that is quite relevant to this approach as well by Professor Carlota Perez. She's done some work around technical revolutions. Again, recommended sort of off-topic reading, but this statement itself was really true to me. And she says, the problem is not that organizations realizing they need to transform. The problem is that organizations are using managerial and infrastructure models from past revolutions to manage the businesses in this one. So for me, the final way, or the final approach, as an enablement team, and I haven't in the previous two named the specific engagements, but in this one I will. So this one was the ways of working. So after multiple approaches and projects and programs and initiatives, a bit of a semi-reset was performed, with C-level coup, Patrick Eldridge, sponsoring the new ways of working and called this WOW. And part of that, we launched the DevOps and SRE Accelerator team. So, was this going to solve everything? No, it's not the answer to world peace. And it's not the answer even to organizational DevOps adoption specifically. As the accelerator teams, we were set up to work and partner with areas to help them grow their own capabilities. And to do this, we wanted to understand their impediments. This takes us back to understanding flow and actually making sure that absolutely is where we focus our energy and our efforts of understanding the flow of work, removing the handoffs and their wait times, and focusing on the value realization. So how do we do this? Well, actually, we solved impediments through experiments and using hypothesis-driven experimentation, thinking about development of new ideas, products, services, knowledge, even sort of organizational change. As we ran these experiments, we absolutely had to run them as scientifically as possible. And I like this quote from Jeff Bezos, where he talks about, it's not an experiment if you know it's going to work. This goes on to something that's really important, celebrating failure. Failure is learning, but we need to make it safe to fail. This isn't about bringing down the core bank in the middle of Black Friday, as I think we'd all know the outcome of what that would be. Then we talk about reusability. So it's not about reusability of code, although it absolutely can be about reusability of code and testing and automation. But this is about banking the patterns and anti-patterns that we've used to do the transformation. This could be around taking change time from 5 days to half an hour. This could be about embedding controls back into your pipeline. So many opportunities that could cover, but we need to make sure these are captured and shared by everyone. Then how do you tell the message? How do you share the success? How do you celebrate the learnings? This is fundamentally really key in terms of how we make it successful. Tell the story, and tell it again. This ultimately leads to us building knowledge. And the aim of this knowledge building is to build a community that wants to share, that wants to collaborate against common goals, and recognizing that for each area, they may be at a different stage of their journey. So how would I conclude that? I think for me, we've moved away from a development team taking operational responsibility, operational team sort of giving begrudgingly operational responsibility, to a team now actually where we're talking about driving value, objectively and neutrally, working with clear company goals and clear direction. There's no denying that the coup sponsorship and visible support has really helped to accelerate and bring people to the table that previously weren't there. And it also starts to bring a sense of a common goal. I think if you look back this year, our CEO, Patrick, shared at DOES 20 the move towards member missions and how Nationwide is focusing on more member-centric end-to-end value propositions. And finally, people. People are key. People are critical upon the success or failure of the journey, and specifically the pace of it. So storytelling and experimentation culture are absolutely key to how we evolve and go on this DevOps journey. So where are we now? We've had the three approaches. I think the last 3 to 4 years have been massively successful for us. We now have multiple cloud offerings. We have end-to-end product teams responsible for both build and run that covers current account opening, credit cards, mortgages. We've improved engineering capability. We've got reusable technology such as SpeedLayer, providing abstraction for our system of records and improving the pace and reliability. And we're now experimenting a lot. But there's so much more that I can't cover here, won't do it justice. So how do I conclude in terms of today? I think my conclusion is you can't implement DevOps traditionally. It's not a thing, it's not a project. It's an evolutionary journey. And as with the ways of working, you're never done improving. All three of the approaches, and not just the one approach, has enabled us to progress and accelerate on our continuing DevOps journey within Nationwide. And I want to share a quote from someone whose work has been quite sort of fundamental in our thinking. And it's quite an insightful person, genuinely. And that's John Smart. And he says this, that impediments are not in the path. Impediments are the path. And I think if we applied this sort of thinking to our approaches as we built and learn, I think actually this almost wasn't an ethos that we were working to. But my advice would be for others to refer back to this if they're going on similar journeys. And one final thing that I just want to leave with you is a question. So what's happening within your own organisation? Do you see any similarities with those I've spoken about today? Have you got some of the approaches, but not all of them? Are you trying something totally different? I'd be really interested and keen to sort of share those stories or pass on any more of our detailed expertise and examples. That's it from me. Thank you. Goodbye.